Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 5 NFL Power Rankings. So, going over last week's rankings and what those teams did in Week 4. Last week, at number 10, I had the Jets. They lost to the Broncos 10-9. 9, I had the Packers. They lost to the Vikings 31-29. 8 was the Steelers. They lost to the Colts 27-24. 7, I had the Texans. They beat the Jaguars 24-20. 6 was the Eagles. They lost to the Buccaneers 33-16. 5 was the Seahawks. They lost to the Lions 42-29. 4 was the Lions. They beat the Seahawks 42-29. 3 was the Vikings. They beat the Packers 31-29. 2 was the Bills. They lost to the Ravens 35-10. And 1 was the Chiefs. They defeated the Chargers 17-10. So getting into this week's rankings and coming in at number 10, I've got the Commanders. So the Commanders enter at number 10 after they demolished the Cardinals 42-14. The Commanders' offense was great, putting up 42 points, and the Commanders, they ran the ball very effectively, rushing for 216 yards and 4 touchdowns as a team. Rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels continued his tremendous start to his NFL career, completing 26 of his 30 passes for 233 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, while also adding 47 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Jayden Daniels is also the first quarterback in NFL history to complete at least 85% of his passes in back-to-back games, and he also set an NFL record for completion percentage in the first 4 games of a season at 82.1. But the Commanders, they've been really good to start the year. They're 3-1 and have won 3 straight. They're at number 10. 9, I've got the Packers. So the Packers remain at number 9 despite their loss to the Vikings. I don't want to penalize them for losing to a good team because the Vikings have looked like arguably the best team in the NFL. But the Packers, they lost 31-29. They actually trailed 28-0 in the second quarter before they started to come back, although they ultimately fell short. Jordan Love returned from his knee injury, and he was good, throwing for 389 yards and 4 touchdowns, although he did have 3 picks. Receiver Jaden Reed had a good game with 7 catches for 139 yards and a touchdown, and the Packers' defense didn't play that well. But the Packers, they did a good job of trying to come back, although it ended up being unsuccessful. But the Packers, after a loss to the Vikings, they've remained at number 9. 8th, I've got the Seahawks. So the Seahawks fall to number 8 after they lost to the Lions 42-29. The Seahawks offense was great with 29 points and over 500 yards of offense. Geno Smith continued his great start to the season with a career-high 395 yards. He also had a touchdown and an interception. And running back Kenneth Walker had a good game with 80 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, the defense for the Seahawks, which had been great coming into this week, was not good. They allowed 42 points, which nearly matches the amount of total points they allowed in the first 3 weeks combined, and they did it in 1 game. But the Seahawks, after their first loss of the season, they're now 3-1 and at number 8. 7th, I've got the Ravens. They move up to number 7 after a dominant 35-10 win over the Bills. The Ravens, they actually didn't blow a lead this time, so they're making progress there too. But the Ravens, they dominated this game. The offense was great. Lamar Jackson threw for 2 touchdowns and ran for another. And Derrick Henry had his best game as a Raven, rushing for 199 yards and a touchdown. And he also had a receiving touchdown. Plus, Derrick Henry had an 87-yard touchdown run on the Ravens' first play from scrimmage. And that was actually the longest run in Ravens franchise history. And that is now back-to-back games for Derrick Henry with at least 150 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Then defensively for the Ravens, they were great, holding the Bills to just 10 points. And the Ravens, after back-to-back wins, they're now back to 500 on the year, and they're looking pretty good. They're at number 7. 6th, I've got the Bucs. So the Buccaneers jump back into my top 10 after a 33-16 win over the Eagles. And this was a great bounce-back win and a much-needed bounce-back win for the Buccaneers. As the week before, they had lost to the Broncos, and it wasn't close. But this week, the Bucs, they played a great game. They jumped out to an early lead, ended up leading 24-0 in the second quarter, and they never looked back. The offense was great with 33 points. Baker Mayfield threw for 347 yards and had 3 total touchdowns, 2 passing, 1 rushing. Mike Evans had a good game as a receiver with 8 catches for 94 yards and a touchdown. And the defense was also very good, holding the Eagles to just 16 points and 227 yards, while also totaling 6 sacks. But this was a really good win for the Buccaneers. They get back on track, and they're at number 6. Number 5, I've got the Bills. So the Bills, they lost their first game of the season, and it really wasn't close, as they lost to the Ravens 35-10, and this was by far their worst game of the year. The Bills' offense was shut down all game long, having just 236 yards of offense, averaging 4.1 yards per play, and scoring just 10 points. The Bills' defense also struggled, especially against the run, allowing over 200 rushing yards, and they also allowed a season-high 35 points. But after a bad performance for the Bills, they're still a good team, and they come in at number 5. Fourth, I've got the Texans. So the Texans are at number 4 after they got back into the win column with a 24-20 win over the Jaguars. CJ Stroud had a big game, throwing for a season-high 345 yards and 2 scores, including the game-winning touchdown with 18 seconds left. And the receiver Nico Collins continued his great start to the year with 12 catches for 151 yards and a touchdown. And then the defense was also pretty good for the Texans as well. But the Texans, after a win over the Jaguars actually had the only winless team in the NFL at 0-4. But the Texans, they get back in the win column, and they're at number 4. Coming in at number 3, I've got the Lions. So the Lions move up to number 3 after a 42-29 win over the Seahawks. The Lions offense played their best game of the year by far, as they scored 42 points, had 389 yards of offense, and averaged 7.8 yards per play, and they did all that against a very good Seahawks defense. Jared Goff was good for the Lions, and he actually set an NFL record with the most pass attempts in a game without an incompletion, as Goff went 18 for 18 for 292 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Jared Goff actually also caught a touchdown pass. The Lions, they also ran the ball effectively, rushing for 116 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they weren't great, allowing 29 points and over 500 yards, but the offense was great, especially against a good Seahawks defense. And the Lions, after a big win over the Seahawks, they're at number 3. Number 2, I've got the Vikings. The Vikings, they continue to look like arguably the best team in the NFL, as they beat the Packers 31-29. Sam Darnold continued to look like an MVP contender, as he threw for 275 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception, and he actually leads the NFL with 11 passing touchdowns through the first 4 weeks. But while Darnold was great, so were his top 2 receivers, as Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison both over 70 receiving yards and got in the end zone. And the Vikings defense played their worst game of the year, allowing 29 points, but they forced 4 turnovers and were able to hold on for the win. The Vikings, they remain undefeated. They're at number 2, and I definitely could understand the argument to have them at number 1. And coming in at number 1, I've got the Chiefs. So the Chiefs, they remain at number 1, and they remain undefeated after a 17-10 win over the Chargers. The Chiefs did win, but it wasn't the greatest game. Patrick Mahomes threw another interception, and now has 5 interceptions in 4 games. And the Chiefs also lost star receiver Rashee Rice for the season, as he suffered a torn ACL. The good news for the Chiefs is Travis Kelce finally had a good game, as he was the game's leading receiver with 7 catches for 89 yards. And rookie receiver Xavier Worthy had a good game as well, with 3 catches for 73 yards and a touchdown. And the defense for the Chiefs was also really good, which is 10 points allowed. And all the points for the Chargers actually came off Chiefs turnovers. So when you look at it from that way, the Chiefs defense actually played a really good game. But the Chiefs, they're now one of 2 undefeated teams at 4-0, and they remain at number 1 in my power rankings. But those are my Week 5 NFL power rankings. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications so you don't miss any other upcoming videos. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.